Hey guys, so while I was eating some Edie's chocolate ice cream, I thought of a movie that I have seen recently, and this is actually a nostalgic classic from my childhood, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Now, I know that this movie has a really bad reception as being one of the worst remakes of all time, but to me, it's honestly not bad. It's actually, to me, the better version. There are people that defend it, but the vast majority think that this movie is one of the worst remakes of all time. So I thought I might talk about three remakes that are worse than Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, in my opinion. So this is just an opinion, okay? You don't have to like this movie. If you hate it, that's totally fine. But anyways, guys, you really want to know how bad Charlie and the Chocolate Factory could have been? Well, let's take a look at these three shitty remakes. So, number three is The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, you may be thinking this is a reimagining, I mean, it was marketed as a reboot and a reimagining, but come on, this is a remake. This is a remake of Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man. It does do some things different, but the things it does different are still so similar to the first Spider-Man that you could consider it a remake. So the issue that I had with the Amazing Spider-Man, first of all, was that the webs that come out of Spider-Man aren't organic. Now I know that he made the webs scientifically in the comics, and these web shooters are just being adapted from the comics. But I like it a lot better when Spider-Man was shooting webs out of his wrists. It just felt natural. He had the powers of a spider. He could crawl on walls. And, it just made sense to me that he would shoot the webbing out of his wrists. Honestly, if you have a character called Spider-Man, if you're not going to make the webbing real, then you might as well just make the wall crawling artificial as well. Just have him design some kind of climbers, kind of like they did in Spy Kids 2. Just have him do that. Have all of his powers be technical, like Iron Man. Doesn't make any sense. But anyway, that's not the only issue that I have with this film. It's boring. I was bored throughout this entire film. The main character was boring. The world was boring. It's dull and dreary, just like the earlier DC movies. And a lot of the costumes are shitty. Spider-Man's costume especially is shitty in the first one. Now, I will say that his costume wasn't improved in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. One of the only good things about that shit fest. But the suits and the designs of the creatures in this movie suck ass. The lizard does not look like the character at all. It looks like Bowser from Super Mario Brothers, the 1993 film. And I agree with everyone that the entire plan of the lizard to turn the city into lizard people was completely stupid and unnecessary. And it didn't make a lick of sense. I mean, he was trying to regrow his arm. That was established, but why does he have to transform all of New York into lizard people? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. This movie, it also really messes up the core elements of the first film, like Uncle Ben's death scene, Spider-Man's entire motivation. They got it twisted. The reason why he became Spider-Man wasn't just to get revenge on Uncle Ben. That was taken care of earlier in the film to better establish Spider-Man's goal at being a superhero. Uncle Ben's death was the catalyst for Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man, but that wasn't the entire reason he became Spider-Man. He became Spider-Man because he wanted to honor his Uncle Ben's legacy, but he also, wanted to use his powers to do good and to save people. That was the main reason he became Spider-Man. The way that they handle the most important part of the story is just completely messy and fucked up beyond belief. Now, I will say this. There are a few good characters in the film. Dennis Leary as Captain Stacy was a lot better than the Captain Stacy in Spider-Man 3. That's one of the improvements from the Sam Raimi movies. They actually took the character in a very interesting direction and actually gave him some depth. He actually cares about his daughter in this movie, but he also gets a little character arc to where he realizes that Spider-Man is a good guy, and he like helps take down the Lizard with Spider-Man. I like that. The swinging scenes are pretty cool, but honestly, guys, I would just rather watch the first Spider-Man by Sam Raimi 1,000 times over this piece of shit remake. Also, I gotta say, Sally Field as Ame was a little too bitchy. And honestly, guys, I ought to do an entire video about The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, because I can't cover all of it in this film. But comparing it to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, at least Charlie and the Chocolate Factory got the core elements of the Roald Dahl book down. Like, it really does feel like this is Roald Dahl's universe. Like, what he wrote in his story is like being translated into movie. And one of the big improvements from the first one was the chocolate waterfall. Like, in the first one, it looks like crap water. Let's just be honest. It does not look like chocolate at all. In Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, they got the texture of the chocolate just right. Like, that is like, when you look at that, that is chocolate. There is no denying that that is chocolate. Anyways, guys, we've gone on about The Amazing Spider-Man for too long. Let's move on to the last two. I won't try to like stay on this. If I want to talk about them more, then I'll just do a separate video. So, number 2 is Total Recall. Now, I started off not liking the 1990 Schwarzenegger film, but as I watched more of Schwarzenegger's films, I went back to Total Recall, and I actually enjoyed it. One of the reasons why I didn't really like it was because, as a kid, I just found it a little boring and a little too violent. But even though I still don't quite understand the story because it's very confusing, I still enjoy it. But when I watched Total Recall 2012 with Colin Farrell, Kate Beckinsale, I forgot the third actress, I was bored to death with this movie. Like, this is one of the most boring, forgettable films that I've ever watched. So this isn't exactly a beat-for-beat remake of the first one. I mean, you do have the core, like, he wakes up in a futuristic city and he has a hot wife, and he later finds out that his life is a lie and that he's actually a secret agent. But apparently this is more faithful to the book that the original was based off. And honestly, I honestly think that being faithful to a book doesn't make you better. Like, what makes you good is if you take the elements of the book that work, but like try to make the story work as a whole. That's what Total Recall did. Like, it took elements from the book, but it was able to be its own thing, and it was able to tell a great story with great characters and very witty jokes. But this one was boring, and the futuristic city, it looks good at first, but it becomes boring when you realize that that's the only thing that this film really has to offer. The CGI cars and the buildings and all that, it's set in such a very dull, dreary, and boring world that it really doesn't matter how cool the effects and the everything is. Because, I mean, like Lightyear, the animation was good, but the world surrounding the animation was just a dull, depressing world that you can't enjoy the animation. Same thing with this remake. If it had a lighter tone and I know it's not supposed to have a light tone, it's supposed to be dark, but if it was a lot more energetic and had a lot more color in it, because the first Total Recall, it was set in a very dark and depressing world, but it had color, it had energy, it had pop. This one doesn't. It's very boring to look at, and the stuff that a lot of people would recognize from the first film, they don't honestly need to see here because they can just go to the original film and watch it. I got so bored watching this movie that I can't remember half of it. I know that the scene where they try to convince him that he's still in recall is there, but honestly, guys, this movie was just boring and forgettable, and just it didn't need to be made. It was very unnecessary, and it bombed badly at the box office, and like nobody liked it. Nobody went to see this film when it came out, and it came out around the same time as The Amazing Spider-Man and Men in Black 3. Again, just like comparing it to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, at least Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was colorful, energetic, and it resembled Roald Dahl's book, but it was able to like do some things its own. It was able to like make the world enjoyable, the characters enjoyable, and it was able to like bring a fresh new take on a classic story. Like, it is basically the same movie as the original, but it has its own unique flair, and it introduces us to these characters and to this world in a very new and interesting way. Total Recall doesn't do that. It does the exact same things as the original, but dull and depressing, and there's just no fun whatsoever. At least Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was a lot of fun. And the number one worst remake of all time to me, and the one that really should get you guys to like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory a lot more, is the Beauty and the Beast remake. This remake is the worst in my opinion in every way. So let's talk about all of the things that make this remake so much worse than Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and why Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is the best remake in comparison. Number one, it feels like a stage play. It doesn't feel like a movie. All of these Disney remakes, they feel like stage plays and not movies. And the reason why they feel like stage plays is because they're basically the same movie as their animated predecessors. They don't do anything new. They don't experiment. They don't like try to branch out and come up with new storylines, new plots. They do the exact same thing as the original. And I know why they do it, because they gotta have money. But, you know, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory did something new. Like, it introduced a new backstory for Willy Wonka, and it also, like, introduced a new backstory for Grandpa Joe and gave him a deeper connection to Willy Wonka and his chocolate factory. Beauty and the Beast does a few things, and they try to, like, patch up the plot holes that a lot of people have been noticing throughout the original, but they are so stupid and just boring. Like, there's this magic book that can take them anywhere in the world. Like, what the fuck? I mean, that's stupid. Why would they do that? Doesn't make any sense. And the backstory of why the town forgot about the prince in the castle works. I mean, that's honestly one of the only good things about the movie. Anyways, let's talk about the look of this movie, because if you thought Total Recall was dull, depressing, and boring, oh man, you have not seen anything yet. The world of Beauty and the Beast 2017 is not only dull, depressing, and boring, but it sucks all the color out of the original Beauty and the Beast. Like, there is no color whatsoever, there's no energy, there's no, like, charisma. It's all just grayish nothing. There's nothing in this movie's look or feel that resembles the original's colorful world. Like, and that goes for the designs of the characters too. I didn't mind Emma Watson as Belle back when it came out in 2017, but now that I've seen a lot of reviewers review Beauty and the Beast 2017, they've said that Emma Watson, when she sings, it sounds like she's auto-tuned. I completely see where they're coming from. Like, Emma Watson's Belle just falls flat in every way. She's nothing like the original Belle. Paige O'Hara did a fantastic job bringing her to life. Emma Watson just doesn't do anything. And the Beast looks shitty. Like, it looks like somebody just dressed up in a Beast costume. The teapots and all the furniture look shitty as well. Like, they don't look like characters. They don't emote very well. They just look like teacups and drawers that look like they have a face. And the teapots, I mean, they have painted faces on there, but They just look like lifeless antiques. That's all they look like. They don't look like the same characters from the original that had an emotive face. Gaston is the same character that he was in the first one, but the actor's performance is a lot worse than in the first one. LeFou is honestly annoying in this movie. I mean, he was annoying in the first one, but Josh Gad really wasn't the right pick for LeFou. And the main issue that I have with this movie is these characters don't feel like characters. They feel like actors playing roles in a play. Like, again, this whole movie feels like a stage play and not like an actual movie. It kind of feels like Beauty and the Beast the musical and not Beauty and the Beast the motion picture. Now, compare this to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, whereas it did basically do the same story as the original, but it expanded its world and characters in unique and interesting ways, and in like understandable ways. Like, of course, Willy Wonka would set up this chocolate factory and be non-social because he had issues with his father. His father was like not trying to be abusive. He was trying to like keep his son healthy, but his father instilled doubt into him, and years later he doubted himself again when people started to steal from him and start businesses to compete with his, and they would end up succeeding. So of course he would shut himself from the rest of the world. And again with Grandpa Joe, of course he would have this connection to Willy Wonka. Of course he used to be an old employee for him. That's why he's so connected to the chocolate factory and to Willy Wonka. It makes sense. The people behind this movie knew how to expand these characters and give them new storylines that fit into the story already and make it work. The Beauty and the Beast remake, while it made the whole explanation of the town forgetting the castle and the prince work, the book thing does not make any sense. And the Beast backstory is honestly just in there to force emotions. I didn't really understand why the Beast was turned into this selfish kid because of his father. I don't know. It didn't really work for me back then. But this remake not only didn't need to exist, but it is the embodiment of all of the worst remakes in the world. It was soulless, and it didn't feel like there was any life whatsoever. It didn't feel like a movie. It felt like a play. It felt like they only made it to make money. And above all, this movie took everything out of the original story and just completely killed everything that the first film had that attracted us to it. It basically sucked all of the life out of the world of Beauty and the Beast and its characters and replaced it with nothing but a shell of fake emotions and just fake wonder. And that is why the Beauty and the Beast remake is the #1 worst remake to me. And that is 100% why I think Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is a lot better than a lot of people give it credit for. I definitely recommend you guys go check out Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I know the movie came out in 2005, and it's kind of weird for me to make a movie about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory now, but I recently watched it, and I was going into it expecting to hate it, but honestly, I thought it was amazing. I thought it was probably one of the best remakes of all time. It's just my opinion. So, if you don't like it, that's totally fine. But I don't understand why people give it the crap that they do. Honestly, wish that they made that sequel, Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator. I've heard it's because the book is very twisted and it wouldn't generate to a general audience. But honestly, you don't have to adapt every single detail of the book. I mean, look at the Harry Potter series. They leave out a shit ton of stuff in the books, but they take the most important elements and implement them into the stories. That's all that a book adaptation needs to do. It needs to take the important elements of the story, anything they want, like little tidbits if they want, to use those for comedy, and just, like, place them in the story and make it work. That's all that a book adaptation needs to do. Lord of the Rings is one of the only adaptations that mostly adapts everything into the movie from the book, but they had to leave out a very specific character, apparently a very likable character that probably would have made a lot of people laugh, but they had to do that because the movies were long enough already. I honestly don't understand how anybody could watch 4 hours of a movie. I mean, I like those movies, don't get me wrong, but 4 hours, really? But anyways, guys, what do you think? Do you agree with me or disagree with me? Do you hate Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with a burning passion, or do you like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? Do you like any of these remakes that I bashed on this video, or do you hate them? Let me know down in the comments below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.